Claims. First of all is your claim order. When you print off your claims or you drop them to paper, do you want them sorted by patient, provider, or carrier? Next, your default ERA payment code. That just means that when you're in your ERA screen, which is that button right there with the yellow lightning bolt, when you're in there and you get your EOBs back electronically and you're posting payments in that screen, by default, do you want to say payment from insurance or do you want to say payment ERA? If you don't like what you see here, of course, you can always delete it and then click the ellipsis button. And then if I don't like what I see here, I can click on Add New, type in my code, ERA, and say something like, be sure to save the work, close, it populates here, I can go ahead and double click on it, and that's going to be my default code anytime I'm posting payments. That means I can still override it if I want to, but at least don't have to type it in every single time when I'm posting payments in my ERA. Until EDI enrollment approved, what that means is that when you first sign on with AdvancedMD, you want to submit claims electronically to all state carriers, including Blue Cross Blue Shield, and some commercial carriers. Most commercial carriers you can submit claims automatically electronically, but these state carriers and Blue Cross Blue Shield, 9 times out of 10, you need an approval from McKesson and the insurance carrier that will come back through AdvancedMD for you to go ahead and submit claims electronically. So what do you want to do in the meantime with these claims? Do you want to hold them and then just wait until you get an email from AdvancedMD that says, hey, you're okay, you're good to go to submit claims electronically? Or do you want to print them in office until you're approved? Or do you want to go e-claims to paper? Now for about 50-51 cents you want to check with AdvancedMD. That includes the price of the stamp, and what happens is you can submit your claims electronically to McKesson, and then for about, like I said, about 51 cents, they'll drop it to paper for you, stuff it and stamp it, and it includes the cost of the stamp and mail it off for you. That's if you don't want to hire anybody in your office to do the work, but have somebody else do it, outsource it, if you will. Now, until your EDI agreements are approved, if you haven't heard about this, then you want to make sure you check with your reseller or with AdvancedMD to make sure that you have the packet so you can fill out all the agreements to send it back in so you can get the ball rolling to be approved. Usually approval takes between a month to 2 months, just depending on how quick your office can get those agreements back into AdvancedMD. Use the master carrier list. All this means is when you're setting up the insurance carriers, do you want to be able to use AdvancedMD's master carrier list, meaning that, let's say United Healthcare in Utah, they have an update with their address. If we use the master carrier list, it actually links to that, so if there's any updates, you get automatically those updates in your insurance carrier database here, or your insurance carrier screen. And of course, if you say no, then there's no links, there's no automatic updates, and you'll have to track that yourself. Days before flagging an unpaid claim run. Now, flagging doesn't mean you get pop-up boxes or anything. You actually have to go into a screen, and actually it's that green icon right there called the Claims Center. Once you go into a screen, there's another screen or a tab you can click on, and it will have little yellow yield signs next to each claim run you submitted. So for example, let's say we submitted claims off today, and included in that claim run is Blue Cross Blue Shield, also claims going out to Medicare, United Healthcare, and within that claim run, if none of the carriers get paid, in other words, we don't post payments for, in this case, 30 days, because that's the default that I have, then I'm going to get a little yellow yield sign next to each carrier that's tied to that claim run, or to that time that I submitted claims for all those different carriers. And by the same token down below, instead of just by a whole mass claim run, if I didn't get paid on anybody in that claim run, you can also set the days by individual carrier of the claim run. So let's say we've got 3, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Medicare, and United Healthcare in the claim run. Let's say we're getting paid on 2, but 1 we didn't. Well, right here we can just say on a specific unpaid carrier, any one of them, I'd also like to set it to 30 days if we don't get payment from, and post them in the system. That means you actually have to post it in the system so the system can say, okay, I'm going to not add a little yellow yield sign or a flag for you because we got paid. Typically I would say 30, maybe 35 days. Percent excluded claims to flag claim run. So what this means is when the exclusion set reaches the percent you see here, it will alert you on the Run Alerts tab in the Claims Center. So if I get 100% exclusions, not just 95 or 10%, if I get 100%, it's going to flag me. Now why would I put it so high? Wouldn't I want to be flagged on anything that gets excluded from McKesson? The reason why is, as you'll find out a little later on in training, is that you'll have 2 places to check your excluded claims. I don't want them in both places. I just want them in one. So again, the reason why I set it so high is because I really don't want to pull excluded claims in the claim run. I would actually like to pull it to the exclusion tab. And again, you'll learn a little bit more later on. Percent claims dropped to paper that we want to be flagged. So if we're billing out and our office is going basically electronically on all claims, maybe you want to set that a little bit lower, saying, look, if we hit a 5% threshold, I want to know and be alerted that we actually are dropping more than 5% to paper when actuality we should be sending all claims electronically. So go ahead and set the percentage for that. This last one's kind of a funny one. Relaxed e-remittance validation. So what it's saying is, look, do you want to be relaxed and not have any errors to worry about, or would you like to be notified of errors and not just process everything automatically? So in other words, do you want us to be relaxed about validating your errors, or do you want us to really validate your errors? So if you choose, no, I don't want you to be relaxed, then no's the right answer. If you choose, yes, I don't care about you scrubbing these ERAs for me, then choose yes, and then even though they may have errors, they won't scrub them for you. So if you need to change this, you want to call Advanced Media Support, but by default, no is the better way to go. Next, HCFA. EDI submitter. By default, it's going to be McKesson provider. Of course, you can delete it and choose what you would like, but let me show you where this is coming from. I'm going to go to Master Files, to Carriers, and you learn more about setting up your insurance carriers, but what I wanted to show you here is submitter. When you click on your drop-down arrow, you have default. Anytime you see default, that's referring to your system defaults. You can see down here it's minimized. Or instead of referring it to that, you could say this is going to be submitted via paper or McKesson Group electronically or McKesson provider. And you want to watch the training videos on how to set up your insurance carriers. But for right now, the default, if we choose it here, it's whatever our system default is. Now, the submitter, and I'll close out of here and go back to system defaults, is McKesson provider. So if you don't want McKesson provider set up there, then you can go ahead and set up McKesson Group or paper. And that just means that by default all your insurance carriers are going to be that way unless you click on that drop down arrow that I just showed you and overwrite what your system defaults are for that specific carrier. So all that does is saying, look, at least most of the carriers that I set up are going to be commercial, and all of your commercial carriers are going to be set up with McKesson provider, MCKPRV. Include primary payer. Choose yes if the primary payer info is to be printed in box 9 of the HCFA claim form for claims being submitted to a secondary carrier. And 99% of the time, usually most offices select yes. Print HCFA line item note. You can have it print 24A or 24K. Most of the time it's 24A, but nonetheless you can choose. Include patient payment on claim. And most offices will say no to this. If you say yes, it'll be included on the HCFA claim form. And what that means is when you're rebilling the claim will reflect the total charge and a lesser total because of the patient payment. And we don't want to reflect the lesser total. We want the full total, so I would say in this case no. Your default paper claim form. Again, these are system defaults. Anytime you're generating your paper claims, do you want the default to be HCFA 1500 red? Now the difference between your HCFA 1500 red and your HCFA 1500 is that the 1500 means you have to buy special paper that already has pre-printed on it a red outline. But if you use the 1500 red, what it'll do is it'll pull up Microsoft Word with the red lines in it so you can print that on your color printer if you'd like. So leave that up to you. You don't have to buy special paper if you don't want. You can use the 1500 red. You can see I've got UB92, and you can see I created my own templates. You can actually copy these templates and then change them in Microsoft Word and save them back and name them your own templates and use those as your defaults when you're dropping your claims to paper. Also, you can see we have the CMS 1500 and the 1500 red for the new NPI number going out on the CMS forms. So I'll choose CMS 1500 red, which means, again, I don't need fancy paper, but if you've got fancy paper, then choose CMS 1500. Allows secondary claim form. Now here's what's interesting. This is kind of split down the middle. It's really up to your office. If you say yes, what that does is that it splits and it separates your claims from primary to secondary. And then it allows you to print your primaries off first and then go back and generate your secondaries so you can keep them separate. So that way it's a little bit cleaner when you can separate your primaries from your secondaries. Let me show you what I mean here. This button up here is your claim submission wizard. Now you watch a video and you'll learn more about that, but the default's what I'm looking for. So I'll click on that. Give you a quick overview. Up at the top would be a checklist of all the claims I'd be submitting electronically, but this office key is not set up to go electronically. But down here are all my paper claims. And you see here what says primary, bill primary, then bill non, and then bill both. All that means is that that system default, if I go back to the system defaults, when we say yes, we want to be able to generate or separate our secondaries from our primaries, you get this in this screen, the Claim Submission Wizard, this second option. So first of all, you select your primary by default and you click Next. Any primary claims will generate to paper so you can print them and then stuff them, stamp them, mail them off. Then what you have to do is you have to restart this and select your secondaries, and that's what non means, is your secondaries. Then click Next and it will drop any secondaries to paper if you have any. So that means you have to generate your claims twice. Now, if you go back to the system defaults and you say no, I don't want to do this, you don't get your secondary option here. However, you just get the primary, but included in the primary will also be your secondary. So in other words, they'll be mixed. And if you're okay with them being mixed, then let me close out of here, come back to my system defaults, then go ahead and say no. Again, this is about split down the middle, so whatever works best for your office there. Next, do you want to include write-offs in box 29 of your secondary claims? Yes or no? And finally, your supervising provider, do you want it to equal your referring physician by default? In other words, if you select yes, or you can't select yes, you'd have to call Advanced MD Support and have them change it to yes, but by default it's usually no. But if you say yes, then the supervising provider will default as the visit referring provider, unless you overwrite it in the extra insurance screen. And the extra insurance screen, again, is part of posting charges. It's an extra screen there that you'll learn about when you're posting charges. So usually it's no, but then again your office may be different, and if you need to change that, then go ahead and call support. Dashboard. Now, your dashboard is when you log into Advanced MD, it's that big screen that pops up. If you close out of it, you can always bring it back by going under the File menu down to Dashboard. Now, the system default we're talking about in the dashboard is this column right here, last month to date. You can either have it last month to date for your performance indicators like number of charges, payments, write-offs last month to date, or just the same month but of last year. Now, you can set this up in the rules setup so nobody sees this, so it may not apply to everybody. However, for those who do see this, do you want it to compare to last month to date, or do you want it to compare to last year of the same month that we're in? So if we're in July, then it'll be last year's July. So close out of here, and there you go, last month, same month last year. I'm going to leave it last month and move on to demographics.